Soft, emotional piano music fades in. The screen is black. Slowly, the sound of a bustling city emerges. Honking cars, distant voices, footsteps on pavement. Grace. In every city, behind every closed door, lies a story. Some stories are loud, filled with bright lights, big dreams, and overflowing success. Others are quieter, hidden in the shadows, tucked away in small apartments, whispered between heartbeats of struggle and hope. The screen fades in from black, revealing a breathtaking aerial view of a bustling metropolis. The city sparkles under the morning sun. Skyscrapers glint like giants made of glass and steel, cars weaving through wide, clean streets. Grace, this is the world of the wealthy, where time moves fast, success is measured in numbers, and life feels like an endless race. People chase after more money, more power, more recognition. The camera slowly pans down, shifting from the towering skyscrapers to narrow, crowded streets on the city's outskirts. The roads are cracked, small homes lean against each other like tired friends, and children play with makeshift toys under flickering streetlights. Grace. But just a few blocks away, there's another world. Here, life isn't about boardrooms or luxury cars. It's about making it through the day, holding on to dreams that feel too big for small pockets. Yet it's in these corners where you often find the richest hearts. The screen splits. One side shows a man in a sharp suit closing a business deal in a sleek, glass-walled office. The other side shows a boy with worn-out shoes helping his mother carry heavy groceries down a dusty street. The contrast is striking. Grace, what if I told you that sometimes the smallest gesture from one world can ripple through another and change both forever? The split screen fades. We now see a long, empty road at sunset. A luxury car speeds past, its sleek design gleaming in the fading light. Moments later, thud, the car slows to a stop. A flat tire. The man inside sighs, frustrated. Grace, this is the story of a man who thought he had everything, and a boy who had nothing to give, except his kindness. The camera zooms out, capturing the silhouette of a young boy approaching the car with nothing but a curious smile and an open heart. Grace, but what they didn't know that day was that one small act of kindness would change both their lives forever. Soft morning light streams through a cracked window in a small, cluttered apartment. The sounds of a distant alarm clock blend with faint city noises, honking cars, footsteps on the pavement, and voices calling out to each other. The camera pans across the room. Faded posters of rockets and airplanes taped to the walls, books stacked neatly beside a worn mattress on the floor. Jamal, a 12-year-old boy with bright, curious eyes and a hopeful smile, wakes up. He stretches, rubbing his eyes, then looks over to a small, hand-drawn blueprint of an imaginary invention pinned above his bed. Grace, this is Jamal. Just 12 years old, but his heart carries more wisdom and warmth than many adults twice his age. He dreams of building things, machines, inventions, solutions to problems the world hasn't even noticed yet. But dreams like his often feel too big for the small world he lives in. Jamal quickly gets dressed in his faded school uniform, carefully tucking in his shirt. He moves quietly, trying not to wake his mother, Maria, who is asleep on the couch, exhausted from her night shift at a local diner. Jamal tiptoes into the tiny kitchen, pours cereal into a chipped bowl. There's barely enough left, but he doesn't complain. Instead, he hums softly to himself, his spirit undimmed by the struggles around him. Grace. Jamal doesn't have much. Just a small apartment, secondhand clothes, and a mother who works 2 jobs to keep the lights on. But what he does have is a heart that refuses to give up. After breakfast, Jamal grabs his backpack, but before leaving, he gently pulls a blanket over his mother. Jamal. Love you, Mama. Cut to Jamal walking to school, passing graffiti-covered walls and cracked sidewalks. Despite the tough surroundings, he greets everyone with a smile. A neighbor sweeping the porch, an elderly man sitting on the stoop. Grace. Kindness isn't something Jamal learned from a book. It's stitched into the fabric of who he is, taught by his mother's resilience and shaped by the simple belief that even the smallest acts of goodness matter. Shift to the sleek interior of a luxury penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows reveal a panoramic view of the city skyline. The morning sun reflects off glass surfaces, polished marble floors, and minimalist furniture. It's pristine, almost too perfect, sterile even. Richard Donovan, mid-40s, sharp suit, perfectly styled hair, stands by the window, sipping black coffee from an expensive mug. His face is expressionless, his eyes distant as he watches the city below. Grace, meet Richard Donovan. A man who has everything: wealth, power, influence. The kind of success people chase their whole lives. But if you look closer, beyond the tailored suits and luxury cars, you'll see something missing. Richard moves through his morning routine like clockwork, checking emails on his tablet, glancing at stock market graphs, taking business calls. His apartment is silent, save for the faint hum of city noise seeping through the glass. Cut to Richard in his office, a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling city. He's in a boardroom, surrounded by colleagues in suits discussing quarterly profits. The conversations are sharp, transactional. Richard, close the deal. If they hesitate, walk away. We don't waste time on sentiment. The meeting ends. Richard returns to his office, standing alone, staring out the window again. The camera lingers on his reflection, perfect on the outside, hollow on the inside. Grace. Richard's life is filled with deals, deadlines, and decisions, but no laughter, no warmth, no real connection. His heart is like his penthouse, spacious, immaculate, and empty. Flashback briefly to a photo on his desk. Him as a young man, smiling with his father, who's now gone. The photo is slightly dusty, as if rarely touched. Grace. Somewhere along the way, Richard forgot what it meant to be truly alive. Success became his armor, and isolation his shadow. Split screen. On one side, Jamal laughs with friends at school, sharing a piece of candy, his joy infectious despite having so little. On the other side, Richard dines alone in a five-star restaurant, surrounded by luxury but engulfed in silence. Grace. Two people, two worlds, one filled with wealth but empty of meaning, the other rich in spirit despite material struggle. What could they possibly have in common? The split screen slowly merges into a single road, where fate is about to bring them together. Grace. Sometimes it takes just one moment, one unexpected act of kindness to bridge the gap between two distant hearts. Fade to black, gentle music lingering as we prepare for the pivotal moment. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting an amber glow over the city. The camera follows Richard Donovan's luxury black sedan as it cruises down a less familiar road. The bustling skyscrapers are now far behind, replaced by modest homes, faded storefronts, and cracked sidewalks. Richard glances at his phone mounted on the dashboard. No signal. He sighs, clearly annoyed. His car's sleek interior contrasts sharply with the rundown surroundings outside. Suddenly, thump! The car jolts. Richard's brow furrows as he pulls over to the side of the narrow street. He steps out, frowning, and circles the car. A flat tire. Richard. Perfect. Just perfect. He pulls out his phone again. Still no signal. He checks the trunk for a spare, but looks at the tools with frustration. Clearly, this isn't something he's done before. Across the street, Jamal is sitting on a curb, sipping a cheap juice box, his school backpack slung beside him. He notices Richard struggling with the tire. Jamal watches for a moment, then stands, dusts off his pants, and walks over with his usual easy smile. Jamal. Hey, mister. Looks like you've got a flat. Richard, dressed sharply in his tailored suit, looks down at Jamal, a kid in scuffed sneakers, an old t-shirt, and a backpack that's seen better days. There's a brief pause. Richard. Yeah, I can see that. Jamal. Need some help? I know how to fix it. My uncle showed me before he... Pauses briefly, his smile dimming for a split second. Before he moved away. Richard eyes him skeptically. Richard. Thanks, but I've got it covered. Richard fumbles with the tools, trying to remove the lug nuts, clearly struggling. Jamal watches for a moment, then steps closer. Jamal. You're gonna strip the bolts if you keep doing it like that. You gotta loosen them before lifting the car. Richard stops, sighs heavily, and steps back. He glances at his watch, clearly impatient. Richard. Fine. If you think you can do it faster, go ahead. Jamal rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. He moves confidently, his small hands surprisingly skilled as he loosens the bolts, positions the jack, and starts changing the tire. Richard watches silently, leaning against the car with his arms crossed. His phone finally gets a signal, but he doesn't make a call. Instead, he keeps watching Jamal. Richard, where'd you learn to do that? Jamal. My uncle was a mechanic. Taught me a bunch of stuff before he left. Figured it'd come in handy someday. A brief pause. Richard seems to soften slightly, intrigued by the boy's determination. Richard, don't you have homework or something? Jamal. Yeah, but helping someone feels more important right now. Homework will still be there when I get home. Richard chuckles dryly, perhaps the first genuine emotion he's shown all day. After a few more minutes, Jamal finishes tightening the last bolt. He stands up, wiping his hands on his pants. Jamal. There you go, good as new. Richard steps forward, inspecting the tire, clearly impressed despite himself. He reaches into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $50 bill, and holds it out to Jamal. Richard, here, for your trouble. Jamal looks at the money, then shakes his head politely. Jamal, no thank you, sir. I didn't do it for money. Richard blinks, surprised. In his world, nothing comes without a price. He holds the money out again. Richard, it's not charity. You earned it. Jamal, still refusing, smiling. I didn't help you to earn anything. Just glad I could help. Richard slowly lowers the money, staring at Jamal as if trying to understand him, like he's from another planet. A kid who doesn't want money? In Richard's world, that doesn't make sense. There's an awkward silence. Jamal picks up his backpack, slinging it over his shoulder. Jamal, well, I gotta get home. My mom's probably waiting. Have a good day, mister. Jamal waves and starts walking away, leaving Richard standing by his car, still holding the untouched $50 bill. Richard watches the boy disappear down the street, a strange, unfamiliar feeling stirring inside him. Richard gets back into his car, starts the engine, but doesn't drive off immediately. He sits there for a moment, lost in thought, staring at the crumpled bill in his hand. Grace, sometimes the smallest gestures come from the biggest hearts, and sometimes the person you think you're helping is the one helping you. The camera pulls back as Richard's car drives off into the fading light, but his mind is clearly somewhere else, on a boy named Jamal who expected nothing but gave everything. The scene opens with the hum of city traffic, neon lights reflecting off glass skyscrapers. Richard Donovan's luxury car glides smoothly through the streets, but his mind is clearly elsewhere. His fingers tap rhythmically on the steering wheel, not out of impatience but distraction. Cut to Richard's penthouse, immaculate, sleek, and silent. The floor-to-ceiling windows offer a stunning view of the city skyline, but the emptiness inside feels louder than the world outside. Richard loosens his tie, tosses his keys on the marble countertop, and pours himself a glass of expensive whiskey. He sits on the edge of his pristine leather couch, staring into the glass, the reflection of city lights flickering in the amber liquid. Grace. Richard Donovan had built a life most people could only dream of. Luxury cars, a penthouse in the sky, and a fortune that could buy almost anything. Almost. Richard's gaze drifts to the crumpled $50 bill still tucked in his jacket pocket. He pulls it out, smoothing it absent-mindedly, his mind replaying the encounter with Jamal, the boy's genuine smile, the ease with which he'd refused the money. Flashback montage, Jamal's bright, earnest face saying, I didn't do it for money, just glad I could help. The simple words echo in Richard's mind, louder than the quiet around him. Cut to Richard's office the next day, a high-rise boardroom with glass walls overlooking the city. He's in a meeting with executives, charts and graphs projected on the screen. Executive. We closed the deal, sir. Profits are up 12%. Should we push for the next phase? Richard doesn't respond immediately. His mind drifts, lost in thought. The room's buzz fades into the background. The executive clears his throat. Executive. Mr. Donovan? Richard snaps back to the present, his expression unreadable. He gives a curt nod, dismissing the meeting. Back in his private office, Richard stares out the massive window, the city sprawling below him like a maze. But the view feels different now, less impressive, more hollow. Grace. For the first time in a long time, Richard wasn't thinking about profits, deals, or deadlines. He was thinking about a boy with worn-out shoes and a heart richer than any bank account. He picks up a framed photo on his desk, him as a young man, standing beside his late father. They're both smiling, genuine and carefree. It's a stark contrast to the man he's become. Richard's reflection in the glass blends with the photo, almost as if confronting himself. A flicker of something stirs. Regret? Longing? Maybe both. Richard. When did I forget? The camera lingers as he sets the photo down, his fingers tracing the edge of the frame thoughtfully. Grace. Sometimes the things that change us aren't the grand events, but the quiet moments, the unexpected encounters that hold up a mirror to our souls. For Richard, that mirror was Jamal. The scene fades to black, leaving Richard alone with his thoughts, the city lights flickering like distant stars outside his window. The scene opens with Richard Donovan sitting alone at his sleek, modern dining table in his penthouse. A plate of untouched food sits before him, the city lights twinkling outside like distant stars. The silence feels heavy, interrupted only by the faint ticking of an expensive clock on the wall. Richard's eyes drift to the crumpled $50 bill resting on the counter. He picks it up, staring at it thoughtfully, Jamal's words echoing in his mind. I didn't do it for money, just glad I could help. Cut to the next morning. Richard, dressed more casually than usual, no suit, no tie, gets into his car. There's a sense of purpose in his expression. He's not heading to the office today. Grace, narrator voiceover. Sometimes an encounter lingers not because of what was said, but because of what it revealed. Richard wasn't just searching for the boy who helped him that day. He was searching for something he'd lost within himself. Richard drives through the same modest neighborhood where he met Jamal. The luxury car feels out of place against the backdrop of small homes, cracked sidewalks, and children playing with makeshift toys. He parks and steps out, scanning the area. Spotting a group of kids playing basketball with a dented hoop, he approaches. Richard. Hey, I'm looking for a boy named Jamal. He helped me out the other day. Fixed my car. The kids pause, glancing at Richard with curiosity. One of them points down the street. Kid. That's Jamal's place. The blue door. Richard nods in thanks, walking toward the small, worn-down apartment with peeling paint. He hesitates for a moment, then knocks. The door opens, revealing Maria, Jamal's mother. She looks tired but kind, her eyes filled with quiet strength. Maria. Can I help you? Richard clears his throat, suddenly unsure of himself, a rare feeling for a man used to control. Richard. Hi, I'm Richard Donovan, your son, Jamal. He helped me with my car the other day. I just wanted to thank him properly. Maria's face softens with recognition. Maria. Oh yes, he told me about that. He's out back. She steps aside and Richard enters. The apartment is small but clean, filled with signs of love, a few family photos, drawings pinned to the wall, and the faint aroma of coffee lingering in the air. Out back, Jamal is tinkering with an old bicycle, trying to fix the chain. He looks up, surprised to see Richard. Jamal. Hey, I didn't expect to see you again. Richard smiles, walking over. Richard. Yeah, well, I guess you left an impression. Jamal wipes his hands on a rag and stands up. Richard. I wanted to thank you properly, not just for fixing my car, but for reminding me that kindness doesn't always come with a price tag. Jamal shrugs modestly. Jamal. It was nothing, really. Richard glances back at Maria, then back at Jamal. Richard. It wasn't nothing. You helped me more than you know. There's a pause. Richard takes a breath, as if gathering his thoughts. Richard. I'd like to do something in return. Not out of obligation, but because I believe in paying kindness forward. Maria steps closer, her brow furrowed slightly in concern. Maria, what do you mean? Richard, I'd like to sponsor Jamal's education, full support, tuition, supplies, whatever he needs to reach his dreams. Maria's eyes widen, her hand instinctively covering her mouth as she processes the words. Jamal looks equally shocked. Maria, I don't know what to say. Tears well up in her eyes, but she blinks them back, her pride mingling with gratitude. Richard, you don't have to say anything. Just let me help. Your son has potential, a spark. He deserves every chance to chase his dreams. Maria looks at Jamal, then back at Richard. Maria, why? Why would you do this for us? Richard pauses, his expression softening. Richard, because your son reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that success isn't measured by what you have, but by what you give. A heavy silence follows, filled with unspoken emotion. Finally, Maria nods, her voice trembling slightly. Maria, thank you. You don't know what this means. Jamal steps forward, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Jamal, I'll work hard, I promise. Richard smiles genuinely. Richard, I know you will. The scene fades to Richard walking back to his car, but this time his steps are lighter, his heart fuller. He glances back one last time, watching Jamal and Maria standing in the doorway. A simple family, now forever connected to him. Sometimes the greatest investments aren't in stocks or real estate. They're in people, in hearts, in dreams, in moments that change lives. The camera pans up to the sky, the sun breaking through the clouds symbolizing a new beginning for both Richard and Jamal. Soft, uplifting piano music fades in. The screen shows the city skyline at dawn, a fresh start, symbolizing new beginnings. The camera zooms into a modest neighborhood where Jamal, now wearing a crisp new school uniform and a backpack that looks brand new, stands at the door of his small apartment. His eyes gleam with excitement and nervousness. Maria adjusts Jamal's collar, her hands trembling slightly with pride. Maria, softly, you've got this, baby. Just be yourself. Jamal nods, takes a deep breath, and steps outside. Waiting near the car is Richard Donovan, dressed casually, leaning against the door with a small smile. Grace, narrator voiceover. Kindness has a ripple effect. One small act can create waves that touch lives far beyond what we ever imagined. For Jamal, that ripple was just beginning. The car drives off, blending into the bustling morning traffic as Jamal's new journey unfolds. A vibrant montage begins, accompanied by inspiring instrumental music. The screen is filled with scenes that depict Jamal's transformation over the years. First day at a new school, Jamal stands nervously in front of a large, well-maintained school building. Students walk by with confidence, but Jamal feels like an outsider. Academic struggles. Jamal frowns over textbooks, struggling with math problems, feeling overwhelmed. Mentorship. Richard visits Jamal regularly, guiding him through school projects, helping with homework, and sharing life lessons over cups of hot chocolate in cozy cafes. Breakthrough moments. Jamal's grades improve. He receives his first A on a science project. His face lights up with pride as he shows the paper to Richard and Maria. Personal growth. Jamal participates in school activities, debates, science fairs, even making friends. His confidence grows with every success. Grace, voiceover. Jamal's journey wasn't easy. There were challenges, moments of doubt, and days when giving up felt easier than pushing forward. But with determination, support, and a heart fueled by kindness, he kept moving. The montage slows down as Jamal, now a teenager, stands on stage at a science fair, presenting a project titled Renewable Energy Solutions for Urban Communities. The audience applauds as he receives a first-place ribbon. Richard, sitting in the crowd, claps with quiet pride, his eyes reflecting something deeper than just admiration, fulfillment. Shift to Richard's world. The once cold, sterile environment of his penthouse now has signs of life. A framed photo of him with Jamal and Maria sits on the shelf. The apartment feels warmer, not because of decor, but because of the invisible threads of connection woven through his life. Richard attends Jamal's school events, mentoring him not just academically but emotionally. Through Jamal's growth, Richard begins to change too. Genuine smiles. Richard laughs more, not the polite chuckles of business meetings, but genuine, heartfelt laughter. Acts of kindness. Inspired by Jamal, Richard starts small acts of kindness, donating anonymously to community projects, mentoring underprivileged youth, even stopping to help someone change a flat tire once, mirroring the pivotal moment that changed his own life. Self-reflection. Richard visits his late father's grave for the first time in years, placing flowers gently, his face soft with remembrance and peace. Grace, voiceover. While Richard believed he was the one changing Jamal's life, he didn't realize how much Jamal was changing his. Sometimes we think we're the teacher, only to discover we were the student all along. The scene shifts to a bright, sunny day at an outdoor graduation ceremony. Rows of students in caps and gowns sit nervously, waiting for their names to be called. Among them is Jamal, now older, his eyes filled with pride and gratitude. Maria holds a small bouquet of flowers, her eyes glistening with tears. Richard sits beside her, clapping as Jamal's name is announced. Announcer: Jamal Thompson, bachelor's degree in engineering, with honors. The crowd erupts in applause. Jamal walks across the stage, shaking hands with the dean. He looks into the audience, finding Maria and Richard. Their proud smiles meet his, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they've shared. After the ceremony, they gather for photos. Jamal, holding his diploma, turns to Richard. Jamal, softly with emotion: I couldn't have done this without you. Richard, placing a hand on Jamal's shoulder. No, Jamal, you could have. You just needed someone to remind you of what you were capable of. They share a quiet moment, filled with unspoken gratitude. Cut to Richard's office, where Jamal, now a young professional, steps in wearing a suit, not out of obligation but confidence. He's there not as a charity case but as an equal, ready to contribute to the company that Richard built. They sit together, reviewing projects, brainstorming ideas. Their dynamic has shifted from mentor-student to partners, bound by respect and friendship. Grace. Jamal's kindness didn't just fix a flat tire that day. It filled the emptiness in a man's heart, sparked hope in a struggling family, and planted seeds that grew into a future neither of them could have imagined. The scene fades to Jamal and Richard standing by the office window, looking out over the city, not as strangers from different worlds, but as family shaped by one simple, selfless act. The scene opens with a bright morning sun shining over a bustling community center filled with eager young faces. The walls are adorned with motivational posters, and the atmosphere buzzes with anticipation. A banner reads, "Inspiring the Next Generation." Guest speaker, Jamal Thompson. Jamal, now in his early 30s, confidently steps onto the stage. He's well-dressed, his posture exuding quiet strength, but his warm smile reflects the same kind-hearted boy he once was. The audience of students, some from backgrounds just like his, watches intently. Maria and Richard sit in the front row, beaming with pride. Richard's face shows not just pride, but a quiet contentment, knowing how far Jamal has come. Jamal, pausing, scanning the crowd with a thoughtful smile. When I was your age, I never imagined standing on a stage like this. I didn't come from much, just a small apartment, a hard-working mom, and dreams that felt way bigger than my world could hold. The audience listens closely. A few students lean in, clearly relating. Jamal. But everything changed one day because of something really simple. I saw a man stranded with a flat tire. That's it, just a flat tire. Soft laughter ripples through the audience, but Jamal's expression grows more reflective. Jamal. I helped him, not for money, not for recognition, but because it felt like the right thing to do. What I didn't know then was that this small act of kindness would create a ripple effect that changed both our lives. The camera cuts to Richard, his eyes glistening with emotion. Jamal. That man became my mentor. He believed in me when I didn't know how to believe in myself. He gave me an opportunity, but it was kindness that opened the door. Not money, not power, just kindness. The audience is silent, hanging on every word. Jamal, you see, you don't have to be rich to make an impact. You don't need to have all the answers or wear a suit to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is noticing when someone needs help and being the person who steps up. The students nod, their young faces reflecting the spark of inspiration. After the event, Jamal exits the community center. The sun is beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city streets. As he walks toward his car, he notices a young boy struggling with a bicycle. The chain has come off and the boy looks frustrated. Jamal pauses, watching for a moment, then smiles. He walks over, just as he once did years ago. Jamal, hey there. Looks like you've got a problem with your bike. Need some help? The boy looks up, surprised but grateful, and nods. Jamal kneels beside him, effortlessly fixing the chain. The boy watches in awe. Boy, wow, you're really good at that. Jamal, just something my uncle taught me a long time ago. The boy stands, brushing off his pants. Boy, how much do I owe you? Jamal chuckles softly, shaking his head. Jamal, you don't owe me anything. Just glad I could help. The boy rides off, waving happily. Jamal watches him go, a content smile on his face. As Jamal walks back to his car, the camera pans upward toward the evening sky, painted with hues of orange and pink. Grace's voice returns, soft and reflective. Grace, kindness is like a stone tossed into water. It creates ripples that reach far beyond what we can see. One simple act can touch hearts, change lives, and inspire futures we'll never know. The screen fades to black, and these words appear in white text. Kindness is the seed. The future is the tree. Soft, uplifting music plays as the credits begin to roll.